not even family. They just stood right back and said, well, this man should pull himself up by his own bootstraps. They didn't realize that there were all these forces in the world that were trying to keep me down that way, that the United Church did not want that PhD produced, that the RCMP did not want that tribunal done, and they
but the more they tried, what did that do to you, the more they tried?
I got angry at them. I said, why? What the hell right do they have to do that to me? What the hell have I done wrong? Nothing. I said...
Did you lose your faith in
No, here's the wrong I did. The wrong I did was I expected the church to live by its principles. That was my wrong.
What were its principles?
It claimed to be following in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. You know, to seek, you know, they have this great statement in the United Church to walk humbly and seek justice, you know, in the world. Well, I just expected them to do that. That's what it said on paper. I just asked them to live by their principles when it had to do with land they had stolen from the native people and children that they had hurt and murdered in the residential school. I simply said, do what's right. And I was told time and again that it was wrong for me to have done that.
You knew that it happened before. You were well read.
Yeah.
You realized that the last 200 years, 2,000 years that happened.
Yeah, but I was complicit in it. I was part of the culture that did it, and I was blind to it. You know, raised in that condition of affluence, I had an idea. I remember thinking when I was in my 20s, oh yeah, native people, yeah, they've been put down. I had kind of a vague idea that they were on the outs and they had been attacked and murdered en masse and all that, but it didn't enter my life at all. I mean, it didn't really... The only contact I'd ever had with native people was when I was 15. We went up to a village in northern BC on an exchange, and we lived for 10 days among Aboriginal kids up there, and then they came down into our community and hung out with us. But what I saw just blew my mind in that little community of Hazelton in northern BC. Just unbelievable. I didn't think people lived like that in Canada. You know?
Lived worse than you did.
Well, I mean, yeah, even the poorest white person, they didn't come anywhere near the experience of what was going on in that village. Kids running around, I mean, not just literally without clothes and dying from malnutrition, but I mean, you know, there'd be like, there was a little 6-year-old girl whose dad had gone after with an axe. You know, she was carrying a mark around on her head because her dad had whacked at her while she was drunk. And that was just accepted. Like, I mean, oh yeah, well... It wasn't considered there was anything wrong with that, and I thought, well, these people, I think I was scared by that, you know, and so when I got older, I thought, well, native people are kind of an oddity. I don't really want to understand them too much. I mean, that was all going on to me, but then I realized I had to. The more I began to work with them, I had to understand.
But what did you come to understand?
Well, it didn't come right away. It came over time.
What came?
What genocide really looks like, up close. What it means to be at the receiving end of a campaign to exterminate you. What it means to be the survivors of mass murder. You go around with, you feel like you're going to die at any moment. You're going to be tortured at any moment again. So all you have to do is hide. You've got to hide.
You could identify with that?
Oh, yeah.
I still have nightmares about snakes and all the kind of things that happened to me in school, and very difficult, you know. And sometimes I tried ending my life many times because I just couldn't stand the pain that I was going through.
It took each of us in there one by one, and he had us bend over and he had Vaseline with him. If he did that to each of us 3 times, I remember that, to satisfy himself, to enjoy himself on little kids. I forgot how old I was, either 6, 7, or 8, maybe 9, I forget. But I remember, I'll never forget, Mr. Moore.
He said, "You know what, sis?" He says, "I can't wait to get out of this hellhole. I'm going to tell everything." And then the phone went dead. People at Cooper Island always listened to our phone calls and censored our letters back, coming in and going out. So I was afraid for him, but I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. It turned out as bad as it was. 2 days later, we got a phone call saying that he hung himself. He committed suicide. But I'd never, ever believed in my heart that he'd ever do that. They had them walk through the gym while Richard was still hanging and told them that it could happen to them.
My brother died because of a cattle prod, of a shock of a cattle prod. When he was 4 years old, they dragged him by the hair and they cut his skin right off his head. The pastors did that with a whip, like a horse whip. It was sharp, with these little blades on it. And when I was in there, I heard him scream for help. And right away, there was a lot of blood on the floor. And they wouldn't take him to a hospital or the nurse or nothing. What happened then? When I was in there, I heard him still scream for help. "Rick, help! They're torturing me. I'm gonna die." So he died right away, like that. He was my only best friend and my only brother that I always loved.
What would be the final solution for you? What would relieve your mind or give you comfort?
Well, when you're dealing with a crime this huge, there isn't any solution ultimately, because it's not as if something like this can be healed. It's like when you look at genocide being perpetrated on one group of people, it never stays confined to that one group. It always blows back on the people perpetrating it. And I often think about that when I look at what we're doing to the land and the environment. I mean, we destroyed people who had been living in harmony with the land for thousands, tens of thousands of years. And that can't help but affect us and the way that we live. But I think that something that's huge, you can't just give an apology and a bit of money. It's an insult to people who have been sterilized and seen their friends murdered to think that that's going to solve anything. But what will begin to turn the tables on this is if the perpetrators are brought to justice and are able to say, yes, we did these crimes, yes, we did try to wipe you out. I often know, working with Native people who've been through these death camps, called residential schools, for them, they never talk about money, they never talk about compensation. A lot of the Native politicians will talk about that. But the people on the ground, they keep saying over and over, I just want to face the people who did this to me. I want to tell them what I think about them, and I want them to admit what they did to me in front of the world.
Yeah, I think if they did that, I would forgive them if they would just admit what they did to us is genocide.
The government has never ever came up and acknowledged their mistake of a residential school. And to me that is totally wrong. And the churches are hiding behind the laws of man-made laws and not admitting their wrongs regarding residential school. And I feel that's cowardly.
They're thinking they figured they could get away with it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Why
they
did
could
they
get
figure
away
they'd get
with
away
it. Because they were the law. The church and the government were and still are the law. Churches are exempt from prosecution for these things, clearly. For almost 10 years, the knowledge of these things have been out in the press. The courts have refused to prosecute the churches over these crimes. Time and again, judges have said this issue of genocide is not going to be addressed in this court. They restricted it to issues like, well, the children suffered a loss in education, or they were hit sometimes, but they've refused systematically to address the issue of murder and genocide. We know that in just the residential schools, the official death rate given by the government themselves was 50%. And if they took they claim 100,000 children went through the schools, but that's conservative, because they would often grab children in the whole areas, not just the 7-year-olds and up, which they had to do under the law, but 3-, 4-, 5-year-old kids were common in the residential schools. So if you double their number, you're probably talking 250,000 children went through the residential schools. Half of them who died, 100,000 children alone just in the residential